You looked at yourself in the mirror this morning and didn't actually see your face. No way. Not a single time in your entire life. Wait, I know what that sounds like. You know your face. You see it every day. You know where your moles are, how your left eyebrow sits a little higher than your right one, where that little scar on your chin is. You know all of that by heart. Wrong. You know a version that exists only for you, a version that no one else in their entire existence has ever seen and never will see. And that's not the worst part. The worst part is that the mirror simply doesn't do what you think it does. Not at all. The mirror doesn't reverse anything. Neither left nor right, nor up nor down. Nothing at all. It does just one thing, and it's completely simple. And it's your brain that turns that simple thing into a puzzle. Richard Feynman loved this paradox. He discussed it on the BBC in 1983, laughing, gesturing toward the camera. Because for him, it was the perfect example of how a human mind can take an elementary fact and turn it into a lifelong confusion. Think about it with me. You raise your right hand. The other person raises their left hand. You comb your hair to the right. He combs his to the left. But up is still up. Could the mirror distinguish left and right, but not up and down? What do you mean? It's a piece of glass with a layer of silver behind it. It has no brain or opinion on your directions. Here's what really happens, and it's stranger than you think. The mirror takes every point of your body and projects it backward through its surface. Your nose, which was pointing toward the glass, is now shown as pointing in the opposite direction, backward. Your back, which was facing the room, is now shown as facing the space inside the mirror. That's all. It's the front and the back that are inverted. Not the left, not the right. Not up, not down. Only the axis perpendicular to the surface. Imagine if you were flattened through a pane of glass, as if you passed through a sheet of paper, remaining whole, but reversed. That's exactly what the mirror does to you. It doesn't make you spin. It doesn't make you rotate. It pushes you through yourself. But then, where does the illusion come from? Where does this absolute total sensation come from that left and right are switched? It comes from you, from your brain. When you spot a human silhouette in front of you, your brain performs a movement, an automatic one, that it learned as you grew up. It imagines that this person walked around to face you. It invents a rotation. And when you rotate something around a vertical axis, what was on the left ends up on the right. Mathematically inevitable. The mirror has never spun anyone. The mirror projected a flat image of you through yourself. It's your brain that creates that rotation because it never learned to perceive a flattened human figure in reverse. And it does this so quickly, so automatically, that you never realize what it was doing. Throughout your whole life, in front of every mirror, your brain imagines someone walking around. Your whole life, without ever changing your mind. You're going to tell me, okay, but then why doesn't the top flip over? If the mirror only shifts the front and the back, why don't I see my head upside down? Because no one ever does a mental rotation on the horizontal axis. No one thinks someone arrived by doing a cartwheel when they see them. Everyone imagines that they arrived walking, that is, rotating around the vertical axis. It's a deep biological cultural automatism. But it's just a reflection. Do you want proof? Lie down on the floor in front of the mirror. Turn your head to the side. Now your hair is no longer on the left and right. It's above and below from the point of view of the image in the mirror. And what happens? Your hair is inverted vertically in the image. The top falls down. But the mirror didn't change anything. It's the same mirror, the same glass plate with silver. What changed was the orientation your brain assigns to what it perceives. Pause, think about it. The mirror, for its part, doesn't understand anything. The mirror doesn't know what you call left, nor what you call up. It doesn't know that gravity exists, nor that there is a floor. It performs its basic task. The light that comes from the front bounces back. The light that comes from above also bounces back. The light that comes from the right always bounces back. You're the one who interprets this reflection as a left-right inversion. The mirror doesn't recognize any of your labels. It's not a quirk of nature. It's a quirk of your human brain. It seems anecdotal, like an idle curiosity. But stop for a moment, because what just happened in your head is the most important thing that physics will teach you. You projected humanity onto something that has none. You assumed that a piece of glass understood your categories. You accused the mirror of having inverted left and right, but the mirror doesn't even know what those words mean. Nature doesn't respect your words, never. And every time it seems strange to you, it's almost always because you asked a question that contains your hidden human assumptions. Think about your notion of up. You believe you know what it is. Up is towards the sky. But in Australia, up points in the opposite direction to your up. Up is not a direction in space. It's a vector defined by local gravity. You treat it as if it were absolute, as if it were engraved in the structure of the universe. But it's just a convention tied to your body, your planet, your moment. Think about left and right. They are not properties of space. They are characteristics of objects that have an orientation, like your hand, like a screw, like a DNA molecule. Space itself does not distinguish between the two. If you explained all the laws of physics to an extraterrestrial without ever showing them any human-made object, you wouldn't be able to tell them what left is. Feynman talked about this topic on the program Fun to Imagine in 1983 on the BBC. You can find it online. About 10 minutes, sitting in an armchair, he was wearing a white shirt, gesturing with his hands and laughing a lot. He liked the idea that this left-right confusion was not a mystery at all, just a poorly formulated question. He had already laid this out more rigorously. In the Feynman Lectures on Physics, Volume 1, Chapter 52, Symmetry and Physical Laws, and in a more accessible way, in his book, The Character of Physical Law, published in 1965, Chapter 4. 3 sources, the same common thread. What he said in general terms, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't want to attribute something to him that he didn't say, is that many of the mysteries of nature are actually poorly formulated human questions. You ask, why are left and right reversed? And the question seems innocent, but it assumes that nature distinguishes between left and right. It assumes that the mirror does something with these labels. It assumes, in short, that the world is inhabited by the concepts that live in your head. When I read this for the first time, I had to close the book and go for a walk, because Feynman, in a calm and playful way, was saying something that concerns everything, not just mirrors, everything. That practically everything I find strange in the world is strange only because I am strange, because my brain is strange, because it insists on mentally rotating humans, on calling the sky up, on separating left and right, as if space itself depended on that distinction. And yet, this is where things really get strange, because nature itself actually does distinguish left from right. Not in mirrors, not in blocks of glass, but on a more fundamental level. In the very structure of matter, the universe is left-handed. I'll explain. For a long time, physicists assumed that the laws of nature were perfectly mirror symmetric. If you took an experiment and performed it in reverse, as if you were observing it through a mirror, it should produce exactly the same result. It was obvious, it was beautiful. No one imagined that this could be false. Wolfgang Pauli, one of the greatest physicists of the 20th century, wrote a sentence in January 1957 that would become legendary. He didn't believe that God was a weak right-hander who would choose the left. That was his way of joking. In a way, he was betting against the idea that nature would have a preference. He believed, like everyone else, that sometimes they were symmetrical. He lost that bet a few days later because a physicist at Columbia University in New York, in the cold of January, was proving exactly the opposite. Her name was Chien-Shiung. Her discovery would force all of physics to rethink its concepts about symmetry. And she, incidentally, would never receive the Nobel Prize for this work. But we'll get there. Think with me. First, you need to understand what she was looking for. And to understand that, we need to go back a year. In 1956, two young Chinese physicists working in the United States, Sung-Dao Lee at Columbia and Chen-Neng Yang at Princeton, published a paper that shook their own community. They had noticed something strange in the experimental data about the decay of certain particles, and they proposed the unthinkable. In the weak nuclear force that governs certain radioactive decays, mirror symmetry might not hold. For the first time in physics history, someone suggested nature might choose a side. No one believed them. Pauli was betting against them, as we've already seen. Feynman also considered it unlikely. He said this later in The Character of Physical Law. It was too bold an idea. But the idea existed on paper, and it needed to be verified. Lee called an experimentalist he knew at Columbia, a woman, a Chinese woman who had fled China before the war, who worked on the Manhattan Project during the 1940s, and who was considered the greatest expert in beta decay of her generation, Chien-Shiung. She was called the Queen of Nuclear Physics. She didn't like that nickname. Wu accepts. She cancels her vacation. She gives up a trip to Asia that she had been planning for months. She works for several months in the winter of 1956 in the laboratory of the National Bureau of Standards in Washington because she needed an extremely low cryogenic temperature to align cobalt-60 nuclei, a tenth of a degree above absolute zero. She wants to check if the electrons ejected during the decay leave in a preferred direction relative to the spin axis of the nucleus. If nature is symmetrical, they should leave equally in both directions. If nature favors one side, there will be an imbalance. On December 27, 1956, she gets her result. Almost all the electrons go in a single direction. Nature deviates. Nature chooses a side. Wu telegraphed Li and Yang in January 1957. The physics community panicked. Pauli, who had bet against it, had to publicly retract his words. Feynman, who had considered the experiment almost useless, later cited it as one of the most remarkable results of the century. Li and Yang received the Nobel Prize that same year, less than 12 months after their original proposal, which is almost unprecedented in the history of the award. She was not nominated, and she never would be. The Nobel Committee sometimes mentions technical reasons, sometimes political reasons, and sometimes absolutely nothing. She kept working until retirement. She received distinctions, was elected to the National Academy of Sciences, but the Nobel never. It is one of the best documented injustices in the history of science. Now let's take a step back. Why does this matter? Why should you care about an experiment conducted with cobalt cooled almost to absolute zero in 1956? Because this asymmetry, this preference of nature for one side was not confined to the laboratory. It manifests everywhere. This is where things get dizzying. Observe your DNA. All DNA molecules on Earth, in all living species from bacteria to you, twist in the same direction. A right-handed helix, always, no exceptions. If you take a strand of DNA and compare it to its image in the mirror, they are two distinct objects, and only the right-handed version exists in living beings. Look at your amino acids. The proteins in your body are built from about 20 amino acids. Each one could theoretically exist in two mirror image versions, left and right. But in virtually all known life, only the left-handed version is used. That's what we call homochirality. Life is profoundly left-handed at the molecular level. Observe the matter itself. At the origins of the universe, according to standard models, there should have been as much matter as antimatter. They should have completely annihilated each other, leaving only photons. But we exist. Something in the beginning favored matter over antimatter, and that something could very well be related to the asymmetry that Wu measured. A profound violation of mirror symmetry on a cosmic scale in the first moments after the Big Bang. 13.8 billion years ago, you exist because nature chose a side. You are made of DNA that twists in one direction, of amino acids that fold in one direction, of atoms that survive because your antimatter lost a microscopic battle in the first moments of time. And you, standing in front of your mirror, wonder why the glass seems to flip your right hand. Think about that. The question is so small. The answer is so immense. Go back to the mirror. Go back to your face. Because now that you know what the mirror really does, you can understand why you've never seen your real face. The mirror presents you with an image that is you, turned perpendicular to yourself. Other human beings see you without that rotation. When a friend looks at you, your hair on the right is on the right in their field of vision because they see you directly. When you look at yourself, your hair on the right is on the left in your field of vision because your brain has performed its mental trick. Neither of them is wrong, but they are different. Throughout your whole life, you see the inverted version. Throughout your whole life, the world sees the direct version. And since your face isn't perfectly symmetrical, no human face is, the eyebrow goes up more on the left. The eye is slightly higher on the right. The smile tilts to one side. These two versions are visibly distinct. For someone else, seeing your face reversed would be disconcerting. But that's exactly what you see when you look at yourself. You see the strange version. The world sees the other one. That's why your selfie bothers you a little. Have you ever experienced that? You take a picture with your phone's front camera and think you look good. You see it after the camera flips the image and think you look less attractive. It's not the picture that turned out bad. You recognize your real face better. You see the version that others see. And after a whole life with the mirror version, the other one almost looks like a stranger's. Recall the last person who kissed you. Think about the last person you loved while looking at their face. You knew their true face, the face that they themselves never saw. She loved you back, and she only knew the mirror version of you. You looked at each other without ever truly seeing each other. There's a unique intimacy in that. You know someone in a way they could never know themselves, and they know you in a way you could never know yourself. It's not tragic, it's physics. I think that's more disturbing than beautiful. When I understood that, I spent a week looking at faces on the streets differently. Not because it was poetic, but because it was physical. Nature, the mirror, your brain, the asymmetry and cobalt nuclei, all of that is part of the same conversation. And you, in the midst of all this, have never seen your own face. It's simply true. So, the mirror doesn't invert anything at all. You've spent your whole life believing it did something it doesn't do. You accused a piece of glass of being strange when the strangeness was in your own brain. You projected humanity onto something that has none. You did, in short, what all human beings constantly do everywhere without realizing it. And nature, in turn, all this time, didn't need your interpretation.